Tony thought Damaso was going to cover second. Damaso thought Tony was going to throw the ball to first base. And so they had an area there, and we ended up losing that game. And that was the quietest bus I've ever known in my life. And the next 3 days, man, they came back and we just kicked the Yankees' butt for 3 days.
Very few team meetings. I can just remember maybe one or two that Bobby had where things maybe were kind of going a little sideways, and he kind of brought it all back together.
If you watched me play, you'd probably say, I didn't show much emotion on the field. You didn't see me up in the runway towards the clubhouse either sometimes.
The Blue Jays would head into early August winning 16 of 19, including a 9-game winning streak. Winning 99 games requires a team to be consistent. The Jays only lost 2 head-to-head series the entire season. The Red Sox won 9 of their 13 matchups, and the Royals won 7 of their 12 regular season games. Intriguingly, the Jays' hot streak in August would cool down during a series against the Royals in Kansas City. The Royals were battling for a spot atop the American League West.
We were trying every day to win, and we had some good young pitching, but there were some really good teams. I mean, really, the American League East was a powerhouse. I'm not sure. It's been a long time ago, but I think there were like 4 teams that had a better record than we did in the West. I mean, it was just the East and the West then. In fact, we weren't really the first half of the season. I don't even know if we were 500. I know we weren't playing that great, and we went into Yankee Stadium and we had a 5-game series, if I remember right. And I think we got swept. And from that point on, it seemed like we just took off, and it seemed like we were winning every series. And the second half of the season, we were just playing really well, and right down to the end in September, and we were playing our best ball. And it's nice to go into a playoff when everything seems to be clicking and everybody's playing well.
That was former big leaguer Steve Balboni. In 1985, he was a member of the Kansas City Royals.
Meanwhile, Toronto's seat atop the East got a little shakeup when the visiting Royals shrunk the Blue Jays' lead. In the opener, Hal McRae went 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs as Kansas City wrapped out 13 hits, 12 of which were singles.
Our attitude in 85 and the performance, I think, reflects it during the 162-game schedule is I don't care if we were going to New York. I don't care if we were going to Boston. It didn't matter where we went. Our attitude, without saying it, was, yeah, we may be in your home ballpark, but you're up against us today. And we're not intimidated by any ballpark, any ball club. I think the record for the ball club that year reflects that.
That was Rance Mulliniks. This is episode 4, Down the Stretch. Through the rest of August and into late September, the Jays wouldn't drop more than 2 in a row. However, despite all the success and consistency, perhaps the pressure of a surging Yankees squad was starting to get to them.
As for New York, 7 straight wins and 14 of 15 overall helped them move mighty close to first place.
Looking back, closer Tom Henke says the team understood the situation.
It's the toughest division in baseball, and I think it still is to this day. And, we had guys chasing us, and we knew that. And every game was important. You couldn't just slough off any game. You didn't relax. You couldn't relax. But looking back on it, it was such an exciting, that pitching Yankee Stadium with the crazy Yankee fans. And they were great fans for their home team, but they just tried to intimidate you in any way they could. And what an exciting series that was.
The Jays found themselves leading the division by 2.5 games over the Yankees when they met up for an important late-season 4-game series. The competitiveness of this Jays team was on full display in a game in mid-September. Here's Cito Gaston.
That's been a long time ago, and I'm 80 years old, man. I'm old, guy. So I still remember some of it. I remember in New York, first game in there, we had a 4-game series in there. When the first game in there, we were leading them about 3 or 4 runs late in the ball game. And Tony thought Damaso was going to cover second. Damaso thought Tony was going to throw the ball to first base.
And it was a ball that was hit to Tony's left. He got it when he came up. You could tell right away he anticipated that Damo was going to be at the bag, and Damaso had anticipated that Tony was going to take it himself, i.e. step on the bag and throw it first. And so when Tony went to relay it, he tried to hang on to the ball, but it got away from him. And we know the end result out of that. Later in that ball game, Ron Hasse came up, hits a 3-run home run. We lose the ball game that we should have won.
And we ended up losing that game. And back then, we only had one bus. And that was the quietest bus I've ever ridden on in my life, going back to the hotel. And that particular night, we had to get off the bus a couple of blocks from the hotel because there had a lot of construction there.
And it was a tough loss because it was a huge series at the time because we were neck and neck. The next day, I can't remember who, there was about 5 or 6 of us. We took the train to the ballpark, probably noon, 1 o'clock the next day. And where you get off the subway there is right out behind center field there at Yankee Stadium. And so we were coming in through the gate out there behind the bullpen. It's where they let us into the ballpark. And I remember even some of the the people that took care of the field maintenance, those type of people were telling us, you guys are going to choke. I remember that distinctly.
And the next 3 days, man, they came back and we just kicked the Yankees' butt for 3 days. And to me, that was a big turnaround for us. And I also know that I used to call Henke a lot when things were going pretty bad. And I said to him one time, we had about 8-game lead and we down 2-5. He said, you could be behind. You could be 5 down instead of 5 up. So, you learn a lot of things from people if you listen. But that particular game turned us around. These guys came back and beat the Yankees 3 straight.
I think that's a great illustration of the confidence and the mental toughness of that ball club to bounce back from adversity. Because we did lose Thursday night. We should have won that game. And to be able to bounce right back and win. And we lost Damo because he later on got hit at second base by Ricky Henderson, and they had to drain his knee. So he had to come out of the game. I can't remember if it was Friday night, but I know he didn't play Saturday or Sunday because of swelling in his knee. And Garth went over to second, and we swept him. And I think that's just a great example of how tough that ball club was.
That was Cito Gaston and Rance Mulliniks. For 7 seasons, Mulliniks had a front-row seat to the magical play of Tony Fernandez.
He was just a tremendous player. I always said, kind of jokingly, but that all I had to worry about was everything hit to my right. I didn't have to worry too much about everything to the left because Tony had such great range. Just a tremendous shortstop. And obviously a very good offensive player as well, but defensively, there was nobody in baseball. And I'm not taking anything away from Ozzie Smith or anybody else, Cal Ripken, any of those. They were obviously great players. But there was nobody in baseball there for about 6 or 7 years, especially when Tony was playing shortstop during that time in Toronto, that was a better shortstop or covered more ground. He could do it all. To just watch him play, I used to say, I've got the best seat in the house when it comes to watching Tony because I'm right there next to him. And he made some plays that, even as a major leaguer, you just shake your head and go, how did he do that? The other side that people don't see about, or maybe didn't get to see in Tony if you weren't a teammate, was he's kind of quiet, kind of soft-spoken, but a great competitor, and no one worked harder than Tony at his game. He was completely dedicated to his profession, and it showed on the field. But boy, he could play. I thought underrated simply because he played in Toronto. If he'd have played in New York or L.A., people have been talking about him still today of what he could do.
Along those same lines, I asked Tom Henke if he felt playing with the Jays may have impacted his legacy as one of Major League Baseball's most dominant closers. Henke ended his career with 311 saves. That's good for 26th all-time in Major League Baseball.
You know what? And if it was, I don't care. I enjoyed it so much up there in Toronto and playing with the Blue Jays. Did it hurt me as far as Hall of Fame? My numbers, I got 311 saves, which at the time was 4th all time or 5th when I retired. And if I'd have played for the Yankees or the Dodgers or maybe even the Cardinals for all those years, would that have made a difference? I don't know. And like I said, in the scheme of life, it's really not that important. I enjoyed my time in Toronto. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. If I had to do it all over again, and they say, would you rather play for the Yankees or the Dodgers? I'd have picked the Blue Jays because I loved it up there. I loved the fans. They didn't boo you. Even if you had a bad game, they understood that, hey, you're human and things happen, and sure, they want you to save every game that comes down the road, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. So, yeah, I wouldn't trade my time in Toronto for anything.
Discussing the '85 season with many former Jays, they all talk about how well they got along on and off the field.
I don't say everybody loved each other, but everybody liked each other. And the main thing, we had a bunch of winners in there. You know, you have winners, and you have some guys that don't care about winning. I hate to say that, but you do, or are afraid to win. I don't know how you would put it, but afraid to win. But, you know, the clubhouse is a great clubhouse. I mean, all the guys got along, and, you know, they kept each other loose, and they kept each other in check. You know, and somebody's screwing around, they would jump on. And so it's just, you know, you get the combination of people right combination in a clubhouse, and it means a lot. Certainly when you go out to play, and off the field too, these guys got along. They went out to dinner with each other and joked and teased with each other a lot in the clubhouse, and it was just a good atmosphere in the clubhouse. I think that was a big part of it also.
You know, you go through the battles with those guys, you know, and it's not war, but it's very intense. You know, every game is on the line, and it's like you never leave. You know, when Rance called me, it was like we were out eating lunch in 1985 again. It was so good to hear from him. Jim Acker, I stay in touch with Garth Orge. Though some of my best friends are all from that 1985 team.
Birds of a Blue Jay feather flock together, especially at third base, where Rance Mulliniks and Garth Orge prove that platooning has first-place Toronto blooming. Combining for a 300-plus average and 50 RBIs, this combo stacks up with just about any third baseman in the league.
When I was traded to the Blue Jays, they just told me, you're playing third, and you're going to be platooning with Garth. And again, I realized it was going to be an opportunity for me to get back on the field and continue to develop. I can't speak if Garth took that same approach. We never really had that conversation. We did get along very well. I think if you would have asked any of us, you know, would you want to be the one that played? He wanted to play every day. I wanted to play every day, but that's not what the manager decided to do. And also at that time, you know, we platooned with Ernie and Buck behind the plate. We platooned some in the outfield with Jesse Barfield and a few others. So it wasn't just me and Garth. There was other platoon situations out on the field every day.
Catcher Ernie Whitt swings the left-handed bat of Toronto's other platoon. An all-star with a .280 average and 37 RBIs, Whitt has been cleaning up, along with Buck Martinez.
When I first started, I wanted to play all the time. But, you know, then you sit back and you start listening and you start looking at it. It's like, well, why do I want to continue the negative feel? Let's try to turn around and be a little positive. Maybe, you know, it's going to be best for me and maybe best for the team to give our team a chance to win. So I said, well, maybe this platooning will help prolong my career also, because I'm not going to get, you know, worn down during the course of the season. I will continue to be fresh. That's the way that I tried to look at it and continue on that way. Like, okay, let's go that way. I understand it. That's the way that he wants it. And I had my trust in him. And it worked out for the best. And I think to this day, it probably added, you know, a few more years onto my career.
I think the attitude that I took towards, and I did this the entire time that I played in Toronto, the attitude I took towards that situation was, this is what the organization, this is what my manager is asking me to do. And if that's pinch hit today or play second tomorrow or play third today, whatever that may be, then my responsibility as a professional athlete was to prepare the best that I could to do whatever job I was being asked to do that day. And I found that to be something that worked very well for me. And not worry about, am I in the lineup today? Am I not in the lineup today? Just do the best that I could with what my manager was asking me to do today. And I think that's a great attitude to have. At least it worked very well for me. And that the entire 11 years that I played in Toronto, that was the attitude I took to the ballpark every day.
Heading into the '85 season, Pat Gillick and the front office were confident with the players up and down the roster.
I mean, we had a good group there. You know, Whitt was, if I recall right, Whitt was catching, Upshot first, Garcia at second, Fernandez at short. Mulliniks in order played third, then Bell, Mosby, and Barfield were in the outfield, and Jeff Burrows and Matusik were the DHs. So we had a good rounded club and a very versatile club and a pretty good balance of right and left-hand pitching.
Whitt and Martinez not only needed to support the starting rotation, but also the bullpen.
Pavel struggled early with us. I remember in that season, 85, he was a fierce competitor. He wanted the ball. Gary Lavelle did a nice job. He was really consistent as a left-handed pitcher. We had Ron Musselman, I think, up for a little bit. Dennis Lamp was a sinker ball slider pitcher. Got a lot of ground balls for us. He picked up a lot of wins out of the bullpen. And Tom Filer was another one that was just fastball slider, just very consistent, nothing overpowering, but he was able to execute his pitches. He was a sleeper for us out there.
Into the last month of the season, the Jays led by as many as 7.5 games, but that lead shrank to 5.5 with a week to go. The Jays would sweep the Brewers on the road to finish September. Then, with just 2 series remaining, they looked to capture the American League East Division for the first time in franchise history. But it wouldn't be easy. In Detroit, facing the Tigers, the '84 World Series champions, the Jays struggled.
September had been like the playoffs for us. It was tough.
Detroit Tigers knew the pressure last year, Greg. They don't feel it now, and they're ruining the season for somebody else, perhaps.
Makes the game easier to play, too, Chris. Hats off to Detroit Tigers slugger Darrell Evans, who took a step into the history book last night in Detroit's 4-2 win over the Toronto Blue Jays.
I loved playing in Tiger Stadium. We had a great rivalry with them for a number of years, and loved that old ballpark at the corner of Trumbull and Michigan Avenue. It was we played a lot of games there that meant a lot, and always enjoyed it. The fans, they showed up, they supported the Tigers, but in terms of the way they treated us, I don't ever recall them. I mean, they just cheered for their team and pulled for their Tigers, and it was a great rivalry and a lot of fun. Always look forward to playing there. But you got to remember too, we had a lot of Canadians there that would come across the river. Probably came from Toronto, maybe other parts of Ontario, other parts of Canada. So we always had a good contingent of Blue Jay fans there that were supporting us as well. So it was a wonderful atmosphere.
Being swept by the Tigers left the Jays needing to win 1 game of a 3-game series at home against the Yankees. If the Yankees swept, they'd clinch the division title and earn a spot in the American League Championship Series. The first game seemed to be lining up perfectly. Tom Henke, the Terminator, was on the mound with 2 outs and 2 strikes on Butch Winnegar.
Yeah, we lost the Friday night game, and we knew that we needed 1 win to clinch the division.
On Friday night, the last weekend series against the Yankees in Toronto, we had that game won, and Tom Henke gave up a home run to Butch Winnegar.
Toronto went ahead 3-2, and rookie reliever Tom Henke seemed in control. But with the Jays just 1 strike away from clinching, Butch Winnegar stunned the record crowd. Going, that ball is gone. A game-tying home run.
Although you might not have been able to tell, Henke says throughout his career, he'd feel nerves when he was on the mound.
Oh, sure. You know, and I always had butterflies going in. But once I threw that first pitch on the mound, they were gone. They were gone, and yeah, I knew what I had to do. John Sullivan was so great at preparing you and Al Widmar as far as who you're going to face. But Sully was down there with me. Okay, you got so-and-so, so-and-so. These are the first three guys coming up. This is what they hit. This is what they look for. You know, we didn't have the computer systems and all that technology back then. So, you had to store it in your brain and keep it there. And, so you were well prepared going into the game, but you still had to execute your pitches. And because, again, you're going against the best guys in the world. And, if you make a mistake, you don't do that very often at the big league level and get away with it.
Henke can still remember pitching on that Friday night, having gotten the first 2 batters out and having 2 strikes on Butch Winnegar.
Somebody asked me what it took to be a great closer, and I said, well, a short memory, because you have to be there the next day. And, I always talk to my dad and stuff if I had a tough game or whatever, and he always kept it pretty simple. He says, well, did you do the best you could? I said, well, I did, Dad. No, could you look yourself in the mirror and say you did the best you could? And, yeah, I did, Dad. You know that. And he says, well, then forget it. Forget it, because you're going to have to save a game tomorrow. And I know in that game that Doyle pitched a complete game, I was up warming up to go in that game if he got in trouble. And, he did not and pitched a complete game. So, yeah, those games are tough. I mean, they're hard to erase from your memory. But, you got to look at all the success. And I think over my career, I was probably pretty close to 90% success rate on my saves, which is way up there. So I'm happy, and I know there was times that you give up the lead and blow the save, but, your job's not done. You got to hold them there, and you got to give your team an opportunity to win, which is something that I was always able to do too, because getting a blown save is a kind of a blow to your confidence, but you got to regroup, and that's what I was pretty good at doing, was regrouping, pushing that game aside and saying, okay, that game's over, nothing you can do about it, let's go get the next one.
And I was sitting next to Cito when I never will forget, he hit that ball, and Cito goes, he hit that son of a gun out of here. And that tied the game, and then we ended up losing that game, and that was a tough loss. And then we bounced back on Saturday. Doyle Alexander pitches a magnificent ball game, and we clinched the division. We could have let it carry over to the next day, but we didn't. It was over. That's an experience thing. And say, look, this one's over. It's in the book. Tomorrow we got to come back and play with the same intensity as we did today.
Cito Gaston says the team got a bit lucky.
There was something that happened to the starting staff there. I think Ed Woodson was supposed to pitch and Phil Necro. And they saved Phil back instead of pitching him. And we end up, I think that's the way we beat him, because I always hated to see a knuckleball pitcher pitch to my hitters, and they'd be messed up for a couple of days. And we missed Nuxie, and I think he pitched the second last game. So I think that's helped us too. But hey, that was their decision. I have nothing to do with that. I'm certainly not criticizing. I was just thanking him for not pitching Nuxie earlier. He was an ex-teammate of mine too, but I never knew how to hit Nuxie until I played on the same team with him. I played with him in Atlanta for 4 years, and I learned how you try to hit him, but he wasn't easy to hit at all. He's just Hall of Fame, which he is in the Hall of Fame. But I think by them not pitching him earlier in that series, it helped us out quite a bit.
3 more outs. 3 more outs. And we win the division. We clinch it. And it's a funny thing, at least for me, when you get late in a game such as that, you start counting outs. You go, okay, 6 more outs, 5 more outs, 4 more outs. And then you get to the top of the 9th and go, in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, 3 more outs without them tying the ball game. And we're the division champ.
It's hard to explain the feeling when you get to that point, whether it was the 85 or 92 we won the World Series, or that final out, you got it, because Toronto, we had never won the division at that point. And that was the first time. And I'm so happy I was part of that. And, seeing that ball go into George's mitt, and we knew we were going to the playoffs, and it was an incredible experience.
I think it was electric that day. Absolutely. It seemed like everyone in the city was watching the Blue Jays at that time, and knowing that we were one win away from extending our season and going forward. So it seemed like there was, from the first pitch on, there was electricity coming out of that stadium.
Oh, you know what? It was pressure.
And of course, Doyle got through that inning pretty easily. And Ron Hassey, ironically, the one who hit the 3-run home run on that Thursday night in Yankee Stadium, is the one that flied out to George on that Saturday afternoon.
9 years the Blue Jay fans have waited for this. There's a drive to George Bell. He's got to come in. He's there. He's got it. The Blue Jays have won it. The Jays have won it. They've won the Eastern Division Championship. How about those Toronto Blue Jays? They've done it.
Relief from pressure, relief from joy of finally getting over that hump, man, because we had few more times we tried. I don't think people know. I think it was in '84 when Detroit got up to that great start. Hey, we went into Detroit. We were 2 games behind them, but nobody was looking at us because Detroit was just killing everybody every day. You look up on the scoreboard in the first inning, they have 5, 6 runs. But we went into Detroit 2 games behind them that year, and we split the series, and then we never got close to them again. But you could tell we had a good team right there and no one ever looks back at it. And I think I'm right about that. No one ever looked at it and said, "Hey, these guys are playing pretty good too." It was all about Detroit because, I mean, they were just turnover win day after day, putting up a lot of runs and just playing some great baseball. But we were playing great baseball also, so we knew we were close. We were close to getting there. But that year we finally put it all together and got there.
An incredible experience, and the feelings I guess they're a little bit of relief, because the game's over and it's done, and I guess the joy and stuff. The only thing you can compare it to probably is the birth of your children, the joy you feel, but then you're glad that all the labor and all that stuff is over, but then you have a brand new child in front of you, a gift from God, and I kind of looked at it the same way with baseball.
Yeah, I don't know. You remember George kind of caught that ball in left field for the last out, but it was kind of like climbing a mountain. You climb and climb and climb, and all of a sudden you get to the top, and you just let out a puff and just say, "I made it! I made it!" And that's the feeling that I kind of had, that we've been after this thing for a long period of time, and hopefully we're going to make it, and we did make it, and just let the air out and relax and enjoy the time. But it was a feeling of accomplishment that we finally made it top.
At that point in time, I think it was just more of celebration of finally clinching a division and having the opportunity to go on. As any professional athlete will tell you, the ultimate goal is to achieve the highest thing, and that is, winning the World Series and at least having the opportunity to participate in it.
The feeling for me was obviously just a lot of excitement to have won the division. And really, too, once things settle a little bit, you get back into the clubhouse and so forth, I think a sense of relief.
Step 1 is winning your division. So we knew that we had just conquered step 1, but we also knew that we had our work cut out for us, too, because we were going to go in and face Kansas City.
You expend a lot of emotional energy, and there are ups and downs and tough times and that you have to rebound from. And that last month was very stressful because every game at that point is so critical. It's not like in April, if you lose a tough game, you still got 150 to play. But each one you check off the box in September is one less game you have to either win or one less game that you have the opportunity to make up some ground. So I think those two things combined, a tremendous amount of excitement having won it, the division, and a sense of relief that it was over. Now we can get ready for the postseason.
Kansas City had a lot of great players on their team. And so we knew the work was going to be cut out for us. But for that one day, we were elated, celebrating something that we were striving for all year, is that was to win the division and go on with the opportunity to try to win the American League and then represent the American League in the World Series. It's something, I guess, I always thought that, it was going to be exciting, and it was, because so many years prior to 85, we were like the doormats, and I think that was the start of a good, solid foundation for the organization, was when we, won that game and George Bell caught that ball in left field for the final out. And I think that was just the start of a lot of good things to come for the organization.
The Blue Jays would end the regular season with a record of 99 wins and 62 losses. At home, they were 54 wins and 26 losses, and on the road, 45 wins and 36 losses. An obscure fact about the 85 season is that the Jays only played 161 games, not 162. The discrepancy is a result of a 2-day player strike that resulted in some of the Major League Baseball games not being made up that season. The dispute revolved around 3 issues: salary arbitration, limits on team payrolls, and a pension plan. Major League Baseball's strike in '81 lasted nearly 2 months. Before we head to the American League Championship Series, we'll take a little detour to learn more about two future Hall of Famers at the helm of the '85 Blue Jays, General Manager Pat Gillick and Manager Bobby Cox.
I also owe a debt of thanks to Pat Gillick and Paul Beeston, who I worked for in Toronto. When you talk about enjoying your job and having fun too, these two guys were the very best.
It isn't the one person that goes into the Hall of Fame, it's a group. And that's what I'm proud of, the fact that we hired good people, we hired good scouts, we hired good player personnel people that knew their job and could convey and could teach. And that's what it's all about.
I would hope that I would go into the before I'm dead, but I think I'll probably get there. I'll be one of those guys that taking it after they're dead, which makes no sense at all to me. But, that's whatever's going to be, it's going to happen. I don't even think about it anymore. It's an honor to even think that you had a chance to get in there.
If you're enjoying the show, please share it with others or even rate it. And if you have the means, consider making a donation to Jays Care, your local food bank, or a charity of your choice. If you want to share your memories or thoughts, email me at okbluejays@mail.com. I'm Sam Charles. Thanks for listening.